Ever notice when Caitlin Clark is the victim, she never plays the role of the victim? She spoke up publicly for the first time since Alyssa Thomas came out publicly and said she's been getting death threats to her and her family, and there has been racial slurs thrown at her. What I want to know, Alyssa Thomas, have you reported this to the police? Have you reported this to the FBI? Because they'll get on it and they'll find who's responsible.
There is a conversation happening inside ESPN right now about this Caitlin Clark situation, and it is not a comfortable one. The voices on that platform are not aligned. They are not presenting a unified institutional position. What is happening at ESPN around this topic is something closer to an open internal conflict. And the fact that it is playing out publicly, in real time, through social media posts and on-air commentary tells you everything about how far this story has traveled beyond the boundaries of ordinary sports discourse. Let us be precise about why this conversation is still happening 2 weeks after the incident itself occurred. Caitlin Clark addressed the situation publicly. She expressed that she had woken up on a Thursday morning and the discussion was still actively dominating the news cycle. She noted the duration with visible exasperation. And she is right that the story has persisted with unusual longevity. But the reason it has persisted is not because media organizations are chasing clicks from a story that has run its natural course. The reason it has persisted is because the underlying facts have not been adequately resolved by the institutional responses that followed. A professional athlete was subjected to physical contact during a nationally televised game that, by any reasonable description, constitutes assault in the context of professional athletic competition. Linda Cohn entered this conversation directly and with specificity. Her presence in this discussion is significant in itself. She is a veteran sports journalist with decades of credibility and a platform that carries genuine institutional weight.
To Caitlin Clark, she always takes the high road in these situations. She did it back in the day with Angel Reese. All these controversies. I love what Caitlin Clark said. I do love that she took the high road here, saying this cannot happen to any player in the league, no matter what the situation is, players, coaches, whatever. But she also took the time, which I loved, to basically told the league to be better communicating. She also mentioned the officiating very subtly. I'm going to say it with an exclamation point. The bad officiating in the WNBA has led to most of this minutia. Yeah. Most of this controversy, all of these controversies. Be better, officials. Is there an agenda here that I don't know about? Speaking of agendas,
the central question Cohn raised is one that deserves serious examination. If a player publicly claims to be receiving death threats as a consequence of the controversy surrounding an incident, the appropriate institutional and legal response to that claim is to involve law enforcement. That is not a complicated or controversial position. Credible threats of violence are criminal matters. They are handled through police reports, documented evidence, and legal intervention, not through press conferences and media interviews. The absence of any public indication that law enforcement has been contacted raises questions about the nature and substance of those claims that the media, including ESPN, should be pursuing with the same rigor they would apply to any other significant assertion in a high-profile news story. This is not about dismissing anyone's safety concerns. Genuine threats are serious and deserve serious response. But the response to genuine threats is a police report, not a media tour. And asking why that distinction has not been addressed publicly is the kind of accountability journalism that major sports media platforms exist to provide.
Congratulations to Caitlin Clark. 3 straight years named and voted an All-Star Game starter. That's the great news. Second most votes by the fans for Caitlin Clark. The media, third most votes for Caitlin Clark by members of the media. What about other players in the WNBA? How do they feel about Caitlin Clark and how she is as a guard? Well, they ranked her 11th best among guards. Her numbers and all the other votes got her in as a starter despite that stupidity by many WNBA players who had a vote. Unbelievable. Use your brains. Caitlin is putting up over 21 points a game so far this year. Over 8 assists a game. Not many players rank in the top 5 with those kind of numbers. Offensive production and playmaking ability. That's what Caitlin Clark is. Why do WNBA players continue to bite the hand that feeds them?
Cohn also raised the question of Stephanie White's public posture throughout this situation, specifically her failure to deliver the kind of unambiguous, unconditional public defense of Caitlin Clark that the circumstances warranted. And Cohn asked why the head coach of the Indiana Fever has not stood clearly and visibly in her players' corner in a way that left no room for interpretation or ambiguity. That question is not answered by anything White has said or done publicly in the aftermath of this situation. The press conference comments that have been most widely discussed did not reflect a coach whose priority was demonstrating unequivocal solidarity with her player. They reflected something more complicated and more troubling. A coach whose public communications during a period of crisis involving her franchise cornerstone managed to generate more controversy than clarity.
And that's the worst part of all this, is the new fans are sucking the life out of the WNBA right now. It's just the truth. You are right. You are right, new fans. There has never been more viewership because of Caitlin Clark. There's never been more attention. They're doing 40 minutes on First Take about Caitlin Clark. They never did that before, as Monica McNutt called out. You're right. But you know what there was in the WNBA last year and the years prior? There was other storylines. There was joy. There was talk of competition. There was talk of what was actually happening on the court.
The broader context surrounding this situation has a commercial dimension that the owners of WNBA franchises can no longer afford to treat as a secondary concern. The NBA owners who have invested in WNBA franchises spent the better part of 3 decades absorbing significant annual losses on those investments. Through that extended period of financial losses, the commercial reality of women's professional basketball was one of audience limitations, broadcast viewership that did not generate competitive advertising revenue, and merchandise sales that did not approach the revenue thresholds that justify the operational costs of running a professional sports organization. And then Caitlin Clark arrived, and the commercial mathematics of this league changed in ways that were both dramatic and immediate. Those same NBA owners who have been absorbing losses for decades are now watching an asset they have supported financially through years of negative returns finally begin to demonstrate genuine commercial potential. They are watching broadcast ratings climb. They are watching arenas fill. They are watching merchandise revenue figures that would have been inconceivable 2 seasons ago. They are watching the kind of mainstream cultural conversation around their league that money cannot buy and that marketing campaigns cannot manufacture. All of that commercial potential is tied directly to one player's presence, health, performance, and sustained engagement with the product.
Well, it's getting dirty. It's getting dirty. She's a very bright woman. I'm a little surprised that she included Caitlin Clark in the conversation. And even though they have the same agent, it feels like the WNBA turned on Caitlin Clark. Now they're turning to Caitlin Clark to say, hey, you know what? We need her. Hey, this private conversation I had with the commissioner said Caitlin should, be thankful. She should, everybody should get down on their knees because the amount of money. This commissioner, has done some positive things. They have 5 new expansion teams coming up. They got a TV deal. So there's some positives there. It's the role of the commissioner is kind of to give the presentation of the growth of the game, but also keep the players down. You got to keep them down to a certain level. There's only so much of a financial pie that's going to be available to these players. Are they going to make $300,000? Maybe someday, but Caitlin Clark shouldn't make $78,000 a year and then be thankful that she gets to make $16 million off the court. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark does not need the WNBA.
Every incident that threatens her physical safety is a threat to that commercial potential. Every officiating failure that allows targeted physical conduct to go uncalled is a direct threat to the investment these owners have sustained through years of financial commitment. Every disciplinary response that communicates insufficient consequences for conduct directed at her is an institutional choice that carries real commercial risk. The owners are the lever. They have always been the lever. The commissioner operates within a structure that the owners ultimately control. The coaching staff makes decisions within an organizational environment that ownership shapes and defines. The culture of accountability, or the culture of indifference, that exists within any professional sports franchise reflects choices made at the ownership level about what standards will be demanded and enforced. If the owners of WNBA franchises look at the situation that has developed around Caitlin Clark, look at the officiating failures, the disciplinary inadequacy, the coaching environment, the media conflicts, and the sustained national and international attention this situation has generated, and they decide that this level of institutional dysfunction is acceptable, then they are choosing to put at risk the most valuable commercial asset this league has ever possessed. That choice would be extraordinary in its irresponsibility. After decades of financial losses, after years of waiting for the kind of audience development that Clark has generated, after watching the commercial potential they always hoped existed finally begin to materialize in a measurable and documented way. Allowing the environment surrounding that asset to remain dysfunctional is a choice that serves nobody's interests, least of all the owners themselves. The conversation at ESPN reflects something broader. It reflects the fact that serious journalists with serious platforms are no longer comfortable presenting the institutional position without challenge. They are asking the questions that institutional communications have failed to answer. They are pressing on the inconsistencies between what players have claimed publicly and what the available evidence supports. They are noting the absence of the kind of coaching leadership that this situation demanded and did not receive. What the new audience for WNBA basketball brought with them when they arrived was not unlimited patience. They brought the same standards they apply to every other professional sports league they watch. They brought the expectation that physical safety would be protected, that officiating would be applied consistently, that institutional leadership would respond to crisis with clarity and accountability, that coaches would unambiguously stand behind their players when those players are subjected to documented physical conduct. These are not unreasonable expectations. They are the baseline expectations of any professional sports audience. And over the course of this situation, from the incident to the officiating failure, to the disciplinary response, to the coaching communications, to the media conflict now playing out publicly, those expectations have not been consistently met. The story is not going away because it is a hot topic manufactured for clicks. The story is not going away because the underlying facts represent a genuine institutional failure that has not been adequately addressed, and because the people responsible for addressing it have not yet done so with the seriousness the moment requires. Caitlin Clark woke up 2 weeks after the incident, and the conversation was still dominating the discourse. That is not a media problem. That is an institutional accountability problem that media coverage is simply reflecting. Until the institutions respond with the seriousness and the decisiveness that this situation demands, the conversation will continue. And every day that it continues without genuine resolution is another day that the commercial opportunity this league has been waiting for is being eroded by the failures of the people responsible for protecting it. The owners have the power to change this. They have the financial interest in changing this. And the question of whether they will exercise that power before the window closes is the most important unanswered question in women's professional basketball right now.